Why God placed you in your family, even when it hurts. Some nights, it hits harder than usual. You sit there replaying words that were said at the dinner table, the tension, the silence, the feeling that you don't quite belong in the place you were born into. Maybe it's misunderstanding. Maybe it's distance. Maybe it's wounds that never really healed. And deep down, a quiet question keeps rising. Why this family? Why here? I've felt that question in my own heart too. Not in a dramatic way, just in those honest, quiet moments when things don't make sense. When love feels complicated and connection feels fragile. But Scripture doesn't leave this question unanswered. It reminds us that our lives are not random, not misplaced, not an accident of circumstance. In Acts 17:26 it says, "From one man he made all the nations, and he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands." That includes where you were born and who you were born to. God didn't place you in your family by mistake. Even in the parts that feel broken or confusing, there is intention. Not everything is easy, but nothing is without purpose. And sometimes, the very place that hurts the most is also the place where God begins His deepest work in you. Reason 1. You were placed there by God's sovereign design. It's hard to accept sometimes, especially when your family doesn't look like what you hoped for, when personalities clash, when love feels uneven, when you feel like the odd one out. But the Bible keeps bringing us back to one steady truth. God is not careless with where He places people. Your life didn't begin randomly. You weren't assigned to your family by chance, or by some blind process without meaning. God, in His sovereignty, allowed you to be born into that exact home, in that exact moment in time, surrounded by those exact people. Not because everything there would be easy, but because something there would be necessary. In Psalm 139:13, it says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb." That doesn't just speak about your body. It speaks about intention, care, design. You were known before you were seen, and that means your environment was not overlooked. Even when family dynamics feel messy or unfair, God's sovereignty doesn't disappear. He sees what you see and what you don't. He understands every conversation, every silence, every moment that shaped you. And somehow, within all of that, He is still working with purpose. This doesn't mean everything your family does is right. The Bible never says that. But it does mean your placement is not meaningless. God can take imperfect people and still use them as part of His perfect plan in your life. Sometimes, we spend so much energy wishing we were placed somewhere else that we miss what God is trying to do right where we are. Growth doesn't always come from comfort. Calling doesn't always come from ideal situations. The question slowly shifts from, "Why am I here?" to something deeper. What is God forming in me here? And once you begin to see that your placement has intention, it opens your heart to the next truth. Because if God placed you there on purpose, then your family is not just a location, it's also a place of formation. Reason 2. Your family is the first place God shapes your heart. Before you ever step into the world, before friends, careers, or outside influences begin to shape you, your family becomes the first environment where your heart is formed. It's where you learn how to respond to conflict, how to give or withhold love, how to trust or struggle to trust, how to speak, stay silent, forgive, or hold on to things longer than you should. And while not every lesson is taught perfectly, God still uses that space to begin a deeper work inside you. In Proverbs 22:6 it says, "Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it." That verse shows God's design for family, not as a perfect system, but as a foundational one. A place where direction begins, even if it later needs correction. Some people grow up in homes filled with warmth and guidance. Others grow up in environments that are harder, where love feels inconsistent or misunderstood. But in both cases, God is not absent. He is watching how your heart responds. He is shaping your awareness, your sensitivity, your understanding of what is right and what needs to change. Sometimes, what you learn is what to follow. Other times, what you learn is what to break away from. Even pain can shape something meaningful. It can soften your compassion. It can deepen your awareness. It can push you closer to God when people fall short. None of that is wasted. Joseph, in the Bible, didn't grow up in a simple family either. He was misunderstood, mistreated, even betrayed by his own brothers. And yet, years later, he was able to see something bigger at work. Not because everything was good, but because God used it to shape him into who he needed to become. Your family may not define your future, but it plays a role in shaping your heart for it. And as that shaping happens, through both love and struggle, you begin to realize something important. Maybe you're not just in your family to be shaped. Maybe you're also there to shine. Reason 3, you are called to be a light within your family. And that realization can feel heavy at first, because it means your presence in your family is not passive, it's purposeful. You're not just there to endure or survive what's around you. In many ways, you are there to bring something different into the atmosphere. Jesus said in Matthew 5:16, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." He didn't say to shine only when it's easy, or only when people treat you right. He said to shine, period. And often, the first place that calling begins is not out in the world, but right at home. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. It's choosing patience when others react quickly. It's choosing gentleness when conversations get tense. It's choosing not to repeat words that hurt, even when you've heard them before. It's the small, consistent decisions that reflect Christ, especially when no one seems to notice. And let's be honest, family can be the hardest place to live this out, because they know you. They remember who you were. They've seen your flaws, your mistakes, your weak moments. So when you try to grow, it's not always immediately understood or accepted. But your calling isn't based on their reaction. It's based on obedience. Being a light doesn't mean being perfect. It means being willing to reflect something different. Willing to interrupt cycles of negativity with something rooted in truth and grace. Sometimes your consistency becomes the quiet evidence that God is working, even when no one says it out loud. And over time, light does what it always does. It reveals, it softens, it guides, not by force, but by presence. You may not change your family overnight, but your presence can shift something, a tone, a response, a moment. And sometimes, that's how God begins something deeper, not through control, but through influence. Because once you begin to live differently, it leads you into something even more challenging and even more powerful. Not just shining, but forgiving. Reason 4, God uses family to teach forgiveness and grace. If there's one place where forgiveness is tested the most, it's within family. Not because strangers can't hurt you, but because family wounds tend to go deeper. The words linger longer. The silence feels heavier. The expectations are higher. And yet, this is exactly where God begins to teach one of the most central parts of the Christian life. In Colossians 3:13, it says, "Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you." That kind of forgiveness is not easy. It's not natural. It doesn't come from emotion. It comes from surrender. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It doesn't mean what they did was right. It doesn't erase boundaries or remove wisdom, but it does release something inside you. It keeps your heart from becoming hard. It stops pain from turning into bitterness. And family gives you real opportunities to practice this, not in theory, but in reality. Sometimes you forgive in big moments. Other times, it's daily, quietly, repeatedly. You forgive the tone, the misunderstanding, the lack of support, the things they didn't say, but you felt. And every time you choose to forgive, you reflect something of Christ. Not because it's easy, but because it's aligned with Him. Even Jesus, while being crucified, said in Luke 23:34, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." That's the depth of grace we are called to grow toward. Not instantly, but intentionally. Family becomes the place where this kind of grace is stretched, tested, and slowly strengthened. And as difficult as that can be, something powerful happens in the process. You begin to understand that your story with your family is not just about moments or conflicts. It's part of something larger. Something that reaches beyond just you, because your life and your family are connected to a bigger story that God is still writing. Reason 5. Your family story is part of a bigger spiritual purpose. When you look at your life only from the present moment, it's easy to feel like everything is just happening, random, disconnected, hard to explain. But the Bible invites you to step back and see something wider. Your life is part of a story that didn't start with you and doesn't end with you either. Scripture often speaks in generations. God doesn't just work in individuals. He works through families, through lines of history, through moments that connect across time. What you are experiencing now is not isolated. It sits within something larger that God is still unfolding. In Deuteronomy 7:9, it says, "Know therefore that the Lord your God is God. He is the faithful God, keeping his covenant of love to 1,000 generations of those who love him and keep his commandments." That means God's faithfulness stretches far beyond one lifetime. It reaches backward and forward. So when you think about your family, you're not just looking at personalities or situations. You're looking at a timeline. There are things that were passed down, ways of thinking, ways of reacting, patterns of love, and sometimes patterns of pain. And now, your life is placed right in the middle of that. Joseph's story reflects this clearly. What he experienced within his family was not simple betrayal, rejection, years of separation. But later, he saw something deeper. In Genesis 50:20, he said, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." What looked personal was part of a greater purpose, and maybe that's what's happening in your life too. What feels confusing right now may not be without meaning. God sees the full picture, even when you only see a part of it. Your family story is still being written, and your presence in it is not just about what you go through, it's about what God may do through you within that story. Because once you begin to see your life as part of something bigger, a new question begins to rise. Not just, why am I here? But, what might God be changing through me here? Reason 6. God may be using you to break cycles and start new ones. At some point, you begin to notice patterns, the same arguments, the same emotional reactions, the same distance showing up again and again. And something inside you recognizes it. This didn't start with you, but it could stop with you. The Bible speaks clearly about transformation, not repeating what has always been, but becoming something new. In Romans 12:2, it says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." That includes the patterns you've grown up around. Some cycles are obvious: harsh words, lack of forgiveness, emotional distance. Others are quieter: fear, insecurity, silence where truth should be spoken. These patterns can move through generations without being questioned until someone becomes aware. And sometimes, that someone is you. Breaking a cycle doesn't mean changing everyone around you. It begins with changing how you respond, choosing patience where anger once led, choosing honesty where silence was normal, choosing grace when it would be easier to withdraw. These choices may feel small, but they are not insignificant. They interrupt what has been repeated. They introduce something new. Over time, those small shifts begin to create a different atmosphere. Not instantly, not perfectly, but steadily. What once felt fixed begins to loosen. What once felt unchangeable begins to move. And even if others don't immediately recognize it, something real is happening. God is working through your obedience, not just for you, but for what comes after you. You are not just experiencing your family's story. You are part of how it can change. And as that becomes clearer, another truth begins to settle in your heart. Your presence here is not accidental. It carries meaning. Reason 7. Your presence in your family is never without meaning. And that realization changes something inside you. Because even when nothing around you seems to shift, you begin to understand that your life still matters right where you are. There are days when you feel overlooked, when your efforts go unnoticed, when you wonder if anything you do actually makes a difference. But God's way of working is often quiet, steady, and unseen at first. What feels small to you is not small to Him. In Corinthians 12:18 it says, "But in fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as He wanted them to be." That speaks to intentional placement, not random, not accidental. You are where you are because God allowed it, and He is not careless with His decisions. Your presence carries purpose, even when it doesn't feel obvious. Sometimes, that purpose is in what you give: patience in tense moments, kindness in conversations that could turn harsh, consistency when others are unpredictable. Other times, it's in what God is forming inside you: strength, discernment, a deeper dependence on Him. And sometimes, the purpose is simply this: that you stay grounded in who you are becoming in Christ, even when everything around you pulls in a different direction. You may not see immediate results, you may not receive acknowledgement, but meaning is not measured by visibility. It unfolds over time, often in ways you don't fully recognize until later. God is not asking you to fix everything. He is asking you to be faithful where you are. And as you begin to live with that awareness, something shifts. You stop seeing your situation as something you're trapped in, and begin to see it as something you've been entrusted with. Last thought: when you realize you were sent, not stuck. There comes a quiet moment when everything begins to settle differently in your heart. Not because your family suddenly becomes perfect, or every relationship is restored overnight, but because your perspective starts to change. You begin to see that your life was not randomly placed into your family. It was allowed. It was known. It was part of something God saw long before you understood it. That doesn't remove the pain. It doesn't deny the challenges, but it gives them a different meaning. You're no longer just reacting to your environment. You're walking through it with awareness, with intention, with a deeper trust that God is present, even in what feels incomplete. And slowly, that question that once weighed on you, "Why am I here?" begins to lose its heaviness. Because now you understand something greater. You were not placed in your family to be stuck. You were placed there to grow, to reflect, and to be part of what God is doing, whether you can see it fully yet or not. And that realization changes how you carry everything.